Hey there, my name is Olla Jongerius and I'm your host of our new episode of BeamReach and Beyond of Season 2. This episode is dedicated to equity, diversity and inclusion in the arts world, something personally I have no clue about, that's why I'm so excited about this conversation. Today we have a very special episode because we have not one, not two, not three, but four amazing, fantastic, talented ladies. Rebecca Fontaine-Wolf, Roxana Holz, and Dr. Marie-Annie Mancio, calling us from London, and Joana Simoes Henriques joining us from Lisbon. In this episode, we discuss the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion in the arts world, covering topics such as how prioritizing these values can enrich and democratise arts, the needs for diverse representation and visibility in the art spaces, including galleries and museums, ways to ensure curatorial practices change and challenge dominant narratives and promote alternative viewpoints, efforts to make museum cultural programs more accessible to diverse audience, and finally, how to address the barriers faced by marginalized groups in gaining recognition and support within the art industry. Let's dive into this very interesting conversation. Alrighty, welcome everyone to BeamReach and Beyond. Today we have a lot of guest speakers, which is very exciting. So we'll have all different perspectives. In the topic for today, it's museums, cultural programs, exhibitions, art collectives, and its relation to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And without further ado, because we have quite a lot of topics to cover, I would love our wonderful speakers to introduce themselves. And Joanna, would you like to introduce yourself? Who are you? What is your experience? And what are you doing here? And where are you calling from?
Hello. Who am I? It's a huge question. And I think we are all seeking for that question. But who am I in the museum world? I'm head of education and public programs at MAT, the Museum of Art, Architecture and Technology in Lisbon. And I've always worked with the art and with contemporary art in other museums, in a contemporary art gallery. And I'm a huge advocate for arts for change. And also for cultural management. I have a background on it. And we have been doing a lot of projects, mainly the interdisciplinary projects for very different people, kids, adults, experts, non-experts, special educational needs. So I'm happy to be here and to share my knowledge and experience. Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you very much. Rebecca.
I'm Rebecca Fontaine-Wolf. I'm also an artist, a curator and co-founder and co-director of Infirm's Feminist Art Collective alongside Roxana and Marianne. Before joining Infirms or co-founding Infirms, I was also a vice president to the Society of Women Artists in the UK. So you can see there's kind of a particular interest in amplifying the voices of women artists and highlighting topics surrounding women's lives and experiences, which is also something that I do in my own practice. Currently, I'm working with mirrors and self-portraiture, kind of as a way of exploring my own experiences of womanhood, to sort of highlight some of those visceral realities that are often not spoken about and are uncomfortable, and to look at those societal implications of those as well. And sort of during and post the pandemic, I created a sort of physi-digital mixed media technique, which enabled me to infuse my concerns with identity, self-image, and digital representation directly into the working methodology, so that this conflict was there in the way that I work as well. That's kind of why I'm interested in this topic, as well as you can see that my whole kind of work is about inclusion and amplifying women's voices and experiences. I don't know if you already said a little bit about InFemmes, if we should do a little introduction about InFemmes itself as well. So we are a very small self-funded organization, consisting, as you can see, of the three of us as co-founder, co-directors. We founded in 2020. So it's a relatively young organization, but since then we already managed to curate exhibitions in London, Lisbon, Leicester. We also have shown institutionally in Berlin and collaborated with brands like Carolina Herrera for International Women's Day in 2022. We've also worked with charities. The Carolina Herrera project was in aid of Fundació Arred in Spain. And we also worked with War Child in the UK, where we just curated Lost Girls for International Day of the Girl Child last October. And I think as an organization, basically our aim is to empower women and girls from diverse backgrounds so that they can share their stories and become engaged with the arts. And obviously our primary focus lies in staging exhibitions and using that as a way to facilitate meaningful dialogue around intersectional feminism. But we also do lots of other things in our capacity. So we project manage, curate, have done some mentoring. We even provide an art residency, or Marianne very kindly provides an art residency and art advisory services. So we work internationally. We're all kind of set in different locations. We're sort of across UK, Italy, and Portugal. And we work with both emerging and established artists. So I think that's like a really important thing for us, that we kind of bridge that gap as well. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the introduction. Marianne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Marianne Mancho, and I'm a freelance art historian, writer. I write historical fiction, and I've been interested in feminist practice since forever. I wrote my PhD on feminist readings of contemporary live art practice. I'm also a former sex worker, so I have an interest in sex work advocacy. And I also have a big interest in migration, because my family background is Italian, Uruguayan, French, Austrian, one big jumble. And I grew up in England to Italian parents. So yeah, I'm very interested in these ideas of the other, let's say.
Wonderful, wonderful. The first question I'd like to ask to all of you is that just to cover the basic terms for the audience that perhaps might not be familiar with arts or feminist arts, what does it even mean, feminist art? Why not women art? Why not female art? What does it mean exactly for those who are not familiar with that?
I think that's a great question, and actually not an easy answer, because there are certainly people who would still be debating whether, there's certainly a generation that has its issues with feminism, even using the term feminism. There are some Black artists that don't feel comfortable with feminism as a term, because they feel it was a very white-led movement that doesn't reflect diversity. So, and then other perhaps generations that think we're post-feminism. So, and other. Recently, actually, Griselda Pollock was arguing against using the term woman artist and saying we should say artist woman. So there's lots and lots of debates around it. But I suppose in the broadest sense, this is my personal definition, I would say it's art that deals with issues that are specific to women. So art that promotes equality, art that deals with also biological issues, which are experienced by women in women's bodies, whether it's endometriosis, or there's lots of things, whether it's to do with childbirth, whether it's to do with rights, sexual experiences, domestic violence. There's lots and lots of issues, and that advocates through art for a fairer society, for an equal society. That's the aim of feminism, is equality. It's not
And thank you very much, Marian. And many of you also mentioned that it's especially the aim of the collective, it's all about empowerment. So why empower, and why is it important for different cultural programs, museums, art galleries to have different diversity when it comes to representation, whether it's gender, whether it's sexual orientation, whether it's race, whether it's age? Why do that? Isn't it more about whoever has the best piece of art should be represented? Or why is it important? Say if I'm a curator at a gallery, do I need to actively and proactively look for diversity of voices and representation? Or is it more about the manifestation of whoever gets the best?
Yes, I think it's a thing about balance and also access. So it's like we have to balance years and years of only deciding, someone has decided, a specific group of people who gets to be shown in museum galleries or in newspapers articles, or it's not specific of the art sector, is in several sectors, even in science. So now we have to balance, and I think it's the difference about feminists and also talking about woman art or art made by women. It's like when we are talking about feminists, we are advocating for, women's rights and also this equitable, and so quotas also we are speaking about. So I think that's the main difference. And now when we are programming, we have a responsibility to balance, because it's very easy to program a conference or, an exhibition by this very well-known artist or, scientist, because if you want to find, you will find a man, and usually it's a man from Europe or Northern American, white. So it's very easy to have access to someone that it's an expert on that area. So now you have to dig deeper, and you have to do the work and to find, because there's also women that have been, being not very in the spotlight, but they are also professionals and equally capable and equally intelligent, and have done this great research. And so you have to look for that women and put them on the panel. I think that's the difference. I'm not going to do a panel on women art, but I do have to have the responsibility of doing this diverse panel, of course. And when we are talking about, because we are not today talking about feminists and women's rights, but this applies to all other people, of course, minorities that have not been, by very historical and political reasons, didn't have access to be in the spotlight and to be to have the opportunity. I think that's the major difference.
It is funny how in the 21st century, women are still considered to be minorities. Isn't it incredible? 50% don't
just need to say the same. Exactly. So the same. It's like over 51% of the population. And yet this happens quite regularly. This happened when someone suggested an exhibition at the National Gallery that was a women focused exhibition, and they were told, well, we're not interested in minority exhibitions. This is our National Gallery. So it's still, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to jump in there too. I think it is really crazy. And I think one of the other things is, obviously you've already spoken very well about this, but the fact that art kind of shapes visual culture fine arts kind of is like this core from which it sort of seeps out into all of these different more mainstream media that sort of get consumed on a daily basis. So having that kind of inclusion and diversity within that is really important, because it goes on to then shape this entire visual culture that that kind of shows how we all kind of think about ourselves and how we all see ourselves. So this representation and inclusion is just, really vitally important, especially I think in the artistic sphere.
I will never forget, I think when I was 7 years old, I was watching TV and kind of reflecting, and I remember my mom told me this when I came to her and said, you know what, Mom, I wish I were a man. It's like, why? Because I see that, men are scientists, men are athletes, men are better chefs, men are better, construction workers, men are politicians, men are this. I see only boys everywhere. I don't see myself. So I think that means that being a man is actually better, because you're more successful, you're more talented, you're more gifted. And that was as a 7-year-old girl, that was my reality of the world, because I did not see myself. I did not see women. I did not see other girls being successful on TV, in the media, on the streets, whatever it was. And that kind of shaped my reality, that I want to be a man because to be more successful.
I think that's also a good topic to address maybe today, because the museum sector and the contemporary art sector is very underpaid worldwide, but especially in Portugal. And we are always advocating for the topics that we address in our exhibitions, for rights of minorities, racial rights, ecology, for the planet and everything. But when it comes to our colleagues and the people that work in our sector, usually, because the sector is so underpaid, what it generates is what you were saying, actually, Marianne, is that the only people that work in the sector are people from this very high standard of society. So it's not the real access. And when you go to a museum and you say that you want to have everyone at your museum, right? You are welcome everyone. But if you find a staff that it's composed mainly by beautiful white people that dress, that immediately you can say, that they belong to a certain economic status of society. If you are very different from them, you are not going to feel welcome. So that's one of the things that museums have been, looking inside their own staff and trying to diverse also the teams and to give it more, a more diverse panorama to the people that work in museums. But the thing is, if you don't raise the salaries of people, you are not going to be able to do that in a very just and, transformative way. So that in 10 years from now, you will have, like in every, in a lot of other sectors, that it's more easy just to, climb the social ladder than in art sector. And of course, if you have someone that is programming from a certain background, sometimes it's very difficult to, have this empathy and to put in others' shoes and to, take some risks and to program people that are very different from you, and that that they're going to clash with sometimes the funders, and some of the people that finance actually your museum or your art institution. So that's one of the things that I think the cultural sector has to address now. And also we have to fight for, not working for free. So because if I say yes, working for free, I'm preventing that someone else enters this field because I can work for free because I'm a privileged person, for instance. So, and we have had some cases in the museum, for instance, or, people that are programming festivals or, music festivals or art festivals that really want to collaborate with this huge institution. And they say, I would work for much less or for free. And we usually say, because we can do it, of course, but we usually say, listen, please don't say that, because this is going to dump all the other artists that are, presenting proposals. So that's not fair. So I think we should be more solidary also amongst each others, because only together. I'm not saying that maybe we should create like this unit of artists, women artists or women that work in the sector, but in order to really, in a very organized way, fight for our right to equity.
I always say that diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice. It's something that has to be proactively done. It doesn't come by itself. It's something very, very active that needs to be done. And a lot of tech companies that I work with, they say, well, we do really want to have more diverse representation, want to have more women in leadership, but they just don't apply for this position. We only have male. But if you think about it, if you go to a pond and you don't have any fish there, you haven't caught any fish there, do you still want to continue go fishing there? Or would you go to find a different location where there could be abundance of fish, right? So it's a choice. And all those excuses of there are not enough of women in tech, or there are not enough of women in arts, whatever not, it's just an excuse. It's no more than that.
I think that's been proven as well a few times that women by recruitment companies, that women will always undersell themselves, and if they think they can't do something, they will say, "Oh, I can't do this." Men will pretend they can do it. They have a confidence, so it's about about empowering women to be more confident to apply for things in the first place, and I think. Yeah, as Roxana said, that was a very rewarding project, because we did, in the end, work with some people who were, a couple of whom were in two minds about whether to even apply. So that, you're right, that's what you need. You need examples, and you need to broaden how you reach people to make them feel the conversation includes them, the open call includes them.
Yes, maybe we need to recognize that we are not working in an equal platform in order to create tools and institutions to solve that. And I think the technology world and, AI and all this really programming and engineers and so on, the sector has realized that it was populated mainly by men, and women were really struggling to speak their language and really competing with it. So several institutions have been created now, especially in the UK, to help women like coding, and empower women to how to, be more active and fight for their rights and equal opportunities also here. For instance, in a technical university, that it's an university mainly focused on engineer, several kinds of engineer, but of course very technological also. It has this whole department of women, and that helps feminists, activate and helps young women to find their place and how they can, really advocate for their rights, in a world that it's mainly populated by men. And I think maybe in the art world, we are not recognizing that this is a reality, because we work with these topics that are always addressing diversity. So we do exhibition about what is happening and about diversity and so on, but we are not applying our own discourse. And that's a huge thing. So we need to apply what we are saying. And I think I think it's happening now also.
We'll just share perhaps some examples of big museums or exhibitions what will be the best practices of actually amplifying the underrepresented voices and actually actively curating underrepresented voices, whether it's related to race, whether it's related to gender or migration background, where they have maybe either quotas or specific expectations from artists to make sure they're all represented. Do you have some examples? Maybe even following some of the...
Even definitely in terms of race, there's been a push to at least hire Black curators and to get a Black curatorial perspective. So right now at the Royal Academy in Tangled Pass is one example. And also at the National Portrait Gallery, actually, there's also a show, The Time Is Now. So I think that is happening in terms of race, and the Biennale, in fact, Venice Biennale, also this attempt to incorporate artists from the global south. It's really great that a collective has won a Golden Lion Prize, for example. So these things, yes, I think are happening in institutions that historically have been very racist. I mean, the Royal Academy it's really relatively recent that they have even had a Black academician, male, let alone female. So that's happening. But we were talking a little bit earlier and saying what we're not seeing so much of is, it's almost like all of these diversities are treated individually. So race, okay, an exhibition that deals with that, rather than looking at the bigger picture and how these identities intersect, which of course is also important. What does it mean to, it's one thing to have a Black artist who's an emerging artist who's perhaps living in Africa to a globally successful Black artist who's perhaps living in America. So I think there has to be more nuance around this, and there has to be more notice taken of intersectionality. What does it actually mean? And age is another thing. So, for example, we're seeing a lot of celebration of women artists in their 80s and their 90s, but all these very young emerging artists, and there is this kind of, well, what happens to in between these two extremes? And why are we fetishizing this idea of the undiscovered woman artist who suddenly at 80 or 90 becomes successful? And then, in all manner of ways, doesn't often look at Lubena Hamid have that long to even enjoy that success. And why aren't we directing some effort towards looking at mid-career artists and how we can make sure they don't just disappear and have to be rediscovered at 80 or 90? I don't know, Roxanne or Rebecca, if you Joanne, lots more to add, I'm sure.
Let me be devil's advocate for a moment, because just to kind of a bit of fast spark also in our conversation, I've heard very often from the also tech world that if my product is XYZ for CEO, financial guys, and they happen to be mostly, I don't know, man, middle age. So why would I then why do I have representation? Because those are my clients, and why do I need to have representation if this is my only target group? And some people I've been chatting with before this conversation, I said, well, most of people who buy art are probably middle-aged white men because they have money and then buy art. So why should I have representation if they don't see themselves represented in this art? They don't understand motherhood, womanhood, whatever not, sexual orientation, race. They can't resonate with that. So why then I should try? And in artists, let's be honest, we all live in a capitalistic society. Artists also want to make money.
So the question to all of you will be, what do you think about this notion, about this idea of, you need to just do whatever gets you money?
I think this is such a big question, isn't it? Because like ideally, everybody wants artists to be kind of pure, for artists to kind of create their work from the depths of their soul, to become kind of almost just like survive on air and not consider kind of material reality. But then on the other side, you sort of have this rationale that's like, well, if they can't sell what they're doing, then they need to change their line of work. I mean, it's just realism. So it is. I think as an artist, you're kind of put in this really impossible scenario. I mean, I kind of had a situation recently where I was talking to somebody, and they were kind of really disturbed at the fact that I needed sponsorship and funding for example, for my a show I'm having in my first institutional show I'm having in Berlin later this year, that there needs to be kind of income for the production of work because it's not a selling show. And you can really feel that there's this kind of, it's just slight disgust almost at the sort of mention of the fact that you need funds, and that even if you have a part-time job, that also kind of ruins the mystique of the artist. As the artist, you're supposed to kind of have this exciting big studio that they can come and visit, but you don't have another job, and it's this kind of impossible fantasy that you're supposed to inhabit. So yeah, it is really difficult to navigate. And I think for artists, whether you're a commercial artist and you survive by trying to sell your work, or whether you're an artist who tries to survive off funding that you get from funding applications, when you do that, you also have to jump through hoops. You also have to kind of bend yourself in a way so that funding is applicable to you. So I think you're kind of always between a rock and a hard place as an artist, and it's really it is difficult to kind of try and follow that that artistic vision without being compromised in those ways.
I think both worlds can survive. Either, art galleries are market oriented, right? But then museums have this responsibility to change the market oriented. So if you have an exhibition at Tate or at, Guggenheim of a woman artist, the all pieces that she's going to produce in the future are going to worth more. So then the middle-aged white men are going to want to buy this pieces, because at the end of the day, what they want to do is a good investment. When we are talking about art galleries, because we are seeing art as an investment. They don't care who does it, who's producing the art. And that's the responsibility of museums and cultural institutions to shift this marketing. Because the museums today's museums, the museum of today has this different responsibility. We are not depository of objects anymore. So we are forums. We are politic in a sense, we don't have this politic color, but we have these duties and responsibilities towards society. And we are arenas of discussion of, contemporary issues. And then we are the symbolic spaces of representation, spaces of visibility, but also invisibility. So if I choose to have an exhibition by this artist, or, having a performance, or, this conference, choosing for keynote speaker, this person, I'm, leaving behind a lot of people, invisibility, and I'm giving visibility to this person. So the museum is a place about voices of society, but also of silences, because giving voice to someone, I'm always, because it's impossible to have everyone, at the museum represented. As much as we want to, it's literally impossible. So, but I think that's, going back to your question, I think that's the responsibility of the museum to give value and to have the freedom of program according to their own agendas. And now we have very different institutions that program according to several topics of minorities. And also it's very important that the museum must be a place where the artists and speakers and performers find freedom of speech and freedom of expressing themselves, because they are not focused or pressured by, is this going to sell? And I think that's the huge difference. Well, if I was an artist, I was doing a different piece for an art gallery and a different piece for a museum, or a different piece if I'm, doing public art. So, and I think this is important, and it can all be part of this huge network that, can be complementary. It doesn't have to be to clash with each other, because I think money is what talks at the end of the day. And unfortunately, but that's, how the world works.
Yeah, and also I think we need to change this narrative that only men collect, because historically there have been some incredible female collectors. I'm not even thinking of Peggy Guggenheim, but she's a very obvious example, but contemporarily as well, that we should encourage women with money to collect. And I try and collect on a very small scale, but I do. And I think the idea of collecting from living artists, and that you can decide that you're going to collect from women artists, if that's who you particularly want to represent, or you can decide that you want to only buy the work of Black artists because you feel that they're, that is your way of supporting them in a small way.
I would say probably that as well.
Oh, we're saying we're not talking thousands. We're also talking about levels at which someone might collect, where they would maybe spend that money on a holiday or a car or something else. So we're not talking, sometimes it's a print or a thing, whatever it is, that having, and I think you've both been really good at having these levels of accessibility where people can either obviously you have work that's more expensive, but you also have work that is more accessible.
Well, for instance, in Portugal, one of the most important collectors of contemporary art was Maria da Graça Carmona Costa, and she's a woman. She died recently, but she was very important for a lot of contemporary Portuguese artists during between the late 70s and until nowadays. So, and she was a woman.
Wonderful. I would like to ask perhaps one last question. What are your hopes, wishes, and also recommendations to art galleries, museums, cultural institutions related to all those topics we discussed today?
I think certainly some of the big institutions' acquisition policies need to change. I'm thinking of our UK institutions, places like the National Gallery, have been very slow to buy the work of women artists, or looking at really radical ways of revising their collections, because they didn't buy them at the time, and now perhaps there aren't so many available. So that would be one, to look at their acquisitions policy. Also, I think, as we've said, to really radically rethink your relationship to artists and artist organizations, and make sure that if you're asking them to do something for no money, why are you doing that? Is that something you would ask of your graphic designer, your anyone else working for you, and your lawyer, anyone else working for you in that context for an art institution? I think that's very problematic. There's so much we could say. I think someone else should weigh in.
Well, we can always go to the ICOM definition, although it's the definition that it's now active. It's small, but the definition that was under discussion in the summer of 2 summers ago or more, before the previous one, it was this huge definition of what was the role of a museum, of contemporary museum. So, and it had, it was too long. That's one of the reasons why they ended up like 2 years discussing, and it was not approved. But I think the thing is, institutions should look at the ways they can transform the way that they are working, but also how can they transform the experience in societies. We say usually that we work in a transformative education, and we are a transdisciplinary museum. So we are obliged to address all thematics in all times, for different generations, different races, different people, and also different biologies. That is the planet, the human. That's just speaking in a very anthropocenic perspective. One of the things that we have been discussing in a lot of cultural institutions are how can we have a participatory governance? Is it possible or not to make it more horizontally and not, having like this? Usually the traditional museum, hence it's now shifting, but is, the director, then the curators, and then all the stuff. And the people usually that are welcoming the visitors at the front office are, the less important in the museum hierarchy. So I think, and museums are thinking how can they be more horizontally, and, so I think change should be also one of the key words and also care. Museums should care about society, but also about people and the planet. A lot of museums, and also the museum that I work for, we are doing a lot of programs that are focused on care and well-being, health and well-being. So how can we be these useful tools for society?
Any last words from anyone? Anything else you'd like to add?
I think maybe to kind of add to a more kind of broader demographic that's even outside of the art world, to kind of funding bodies that enable museums, etc. Everybody enjoys art. Everybody enjoys going to museums. It's like a really important part of culture. Is to kind of put more value on that, and again, kind of to mirror what Miriam was saying about kind of just really contemplating how we value that contribution, and to try and put more funding into it, so it's more possible for more different people to access it, because that is just such a This financial barrier is just such a huge barrier artists and also to public?
It's also, where do we put value? Where, us as society. And there's this very well-known Mariana Mazzucato that she talks about where does, the current society has applied value, and it was not on health or education, and that those are artificial, where we put our value is us, as humans that define. And so this, and we have not put any value in education and health. And she was very quoted, of course, during the pandemic. But so we should put more value in culture and not, maybe stock market actions and, and so, but today's value is more on tech, I would say. That maybe we cannot always survive on tech. We need Tibet museums, and we need these spiritual spaces. And more and more also, that's one of the things that we've been discussing. And we need to feel a sense of purpose. And sometimes art, because people, a lot of people don't follow any as a spiritual or religion anymore. So, and people need to find their places in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can also see a lot of art therapy that is already recognized in lots of mental health institutions in Germany, and how it's already considered not like a nice, fun thing to have for your soul, but it's how it does help people overcome depression and burnout and so on and so forth. And institutions use it as part of the recovery process. So it's a lot more than actually.
I think, yes, coming back to that, what you were saying about the pandemic there, and kind of making us sort of, I think it gave us a moment to kind of reassess where we landed, what is important, what isn't important. And I think art came out as such an important thing in all its different, variations, whether that was kind of films and music and painting and all of it. That was what gave us all kind of life during that time of isolation. So yeah, maybe there's a little hope that a little bit of that kind of awareness would trickle down, and make people realize that it actually is such a vital part of being human.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation, contribution, and wonderful sharing of your experience. I wish we could continue this going on and on and on, but unfortunately, due to time, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and looking forward to getting in touch soon.
Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback, recommendations, or would like to be a speaker in our next episode, reach out via hi@beamreach-inclusion.com. Also, if you need our expertise with diversity inclusion training, would like us to conduct a comprehensive audit, or need a helping hand with DI strategy, don't be shy and get in touch. Stay tuned, and until the next episode.